And
would the Democratic Alliance say pull out of the ICJ case?
I'm not in a position to answer that question. We haven't discussed this. I'm not the person sitting here alone taking a decision on behalf of the Democratic Alliance. The DA does not work like that. We don't work like the ANC or the EFF or the PA, where one supreme leader says this is our position. We debate these issues, and of course there's a...
Helen, I'm asking this on the basis that the Democratic Alliance is pushing to become the government of the day, and even if it is through the multi-party charter.
You guys make me laugh. You guys really make me laugh. You keep on telling us that we can't ever be the government, and then when you want to ask...
Who's you guys?
All the journalists and all the so-called pundits.
Where have you heard me
all
say
of
that?
You. Where have you heard the so-called pundits say what you say?
Where have you heard me say that, Helen?
The bottom line is...
Where have you heard me say that, Helen?
So Helen Zille seems to be under fire in this really hot interview where she's really being asked questions about the DA stance on Israel. But it's her comparison between the DA, the EFF, the ANC and the Patriotic Alliance that really interests me. Listen to what Helen Zille has to say about leadership in the EFF, the PA and the ANC, and we'll be back for some analysis.
Nothing we say about the Middle East can change the situation there. Mm-hmm. Our job is to change the situation in South Africa. Our job is to rescue South Africa.
Yeah.
And nothing we say or do, and no posturing at all, is going to change anything in the Middle East.
Well, you're essentially a government in waiting, so it's important to ask these questions and to know exactly what the Democratic Alliance's stance on it is. Because after May 29, if the Democratic Alliance, for instance, does become the majority party, or even through a coalition, we would want to know what happens to the ICJ case, for instance. Would the South Africa, under the leadership of the Democratic Alliance, say, no, let's pull out of that? Would the stance, the international relations stance of South Africa's change and shift from what it is currently?
Well, I'm not going to go into hypothetical questions. Let's get into government, and then we'll discuss it.
Well, I'm going to ask you questions about what happens when you come into government on education, for instance.
Good, do
and I'm
that.
sure you're going to have an answer for that. But what's the answer in relation to Israel in terms of your international relations approach once the Democratic Alliance is the government of the day, or if?
I've just told you what our answer is. Our answer is a two-state solution and anything that promotes a two-state solution. And
would the Democratic Alliance say pull out of the ICJ case?
I'm not in a position to answer that question. We haven't discussed this. I'm not the person sitting here alone taking a decision on behalf of the Democratic Alliance. The DA does not work like that. We have internal processes, internal structures that take policy decisions after debate. We don't work like the ANC or the EFF or the PA, where one supreme leader says this is our position. We debate these issues. And of course, there's a wide divergence of positions on this particular issue within the DA. It would be very surprising if there weren't, because we represent the entire spectrum of the public of South Africa. We bring together Jews and Muslims. We bring together Christians and atheists. We bring together all of us who believe in defending freedom and the rights of others to hold different views.
Yeah.
So there are a very wide range of views in the DA on this question. And I can't sit here on television and invent a position.
Yeah, and again, Helen, I'm asking this on the basis that the Democratic Alliance is pushing to become the government of the day, and even if it is through the multi-party charter.
You guys make me laugh. You guys really make me laugh. You keep on telling us that we can't ever be the government, and then when you want to ask...
Who's you guys?
All the journalists and all the so-called pundits.
Where have you heard me
all
say
of
that?
You. Where have you heard the so-called pundits say what you say?
Where have you heard me say that, Helen?
The bottom line is...
Where have you heard me say that, Helen?
I haven't heard you particularly, but I have heard the pundits
now
say
I'm
that.
asking a question that the Democratic Alliance is pushing to become the government of the day, even through the multi-party charter. The Democratic Alliance has shown that it's actually willing to even speak to lawmakers in the United States, right? What's the reasoning behind that?
Look, I haven't been involved in any of the political discussions because I run the DA's administration and I run the internal management system. If you want to ask me about the blue machine, please do. I've been involved in no discussions with any lawmakers anywhere. I'm sitting here making sure the blue machine works. I haven't been part of caucus discussions on this issue, and I don't know who or if anyone has met with lawmakers in the United States. You clearly have information that I don't have. So I'd be very grateful to hear from you.
Yeah, so what do you guys think about I think it was a really hot interview, really straining to really watch and listen. But the point Helen Zille tries to make here is how, the Democratic Alliance seems to be a lot more democratic in their approach to leadership, where they discuss issues and come to a resolution upon an agreed consensus rather than having this supreme leadership as she sees the ANC and the EFF and the PA. So she has earlier in a video I posted on Kwazemi here accused the PA, Gayton McKenzie, as being a supreme leader. So everything he says is what has to be, and there's really no consensus. There's really no body of meetings. This is her own perspective, her own understanding of leadership. And the EFF also, she has this notion that Julius Malema also seems to be like a supreme leader, where it's most of his vision that actually drives the EFF movement, and the DA isn't like this. But in trying to analyze her points on the Israeli issue, the ICJ case with Israel at the moment, that's sponsored heavily by the ANC government with Naledi Pandor and President Cyril Ramaphosa. I listened to what Emma Powell, I think Emma Powell is a DA party member who actually has been charged to, dominate discussions around the issue with the ICJ and Israel, the case at the moment. And when I listen to Emma Powell, I hear that she speaks about the DA stance, on the Israeli issue, that that the DA condemns. I think I'll try to read quickly the DA stance, especially in terms of President Benjamin Netanyahu's position on opposing the establishment of a Palestinian state. So it says here that the DA rejects the Israeli Prime Minister. This was a statement made in January 19, 2024, that the DA rejects the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's comments opposing the establishment of a Palestinian state as part of a post-war scenario. And it notes that during the live address, President Netanyahu claimed that Israel must have security over all territory west of the Jordan River, acknowledging that this collides with the idea of sovereignty, and that throughout the tragic war, the DA has remained steadfast in its commitment to a two-state solution that results in the creation of a sovereign and unoccupied Palestine coexisting in peace next to a secure Israel. So this is the DA stance as regards the solution it actually anticipates for the Israeli and Gaza conflict at the moment. So they go on further to say that, according to the DA now, a two-state solution is the only way to bring lasting peace to the region, a view shared by a vast majority of the free world. And in the interest of peace for the Palestinians, Israelis, and the world, the DA calls on President Netanyahu to recommit to a two-state solution as outlined in resolutions 242 and 338 of the United Nations Security Council. And so it concludes by saying that the DA party has warned from the start of this conflict that for peace to be possible, rationality must triumph over radicalism, and that the only rational path to peace is to recognize the inherent right of both Palestinians and Israelis to statehood, sovereignty, and security. Instead of undermining the path towards a two-state solution, now is the time to reaffirm it. And so this is the DA stance that Helen Zille is really struggling to articulate in this interview. I'm not saying that she doesn't know about this stand, but I think she tries to present a form of a view that she's not able to give absolute conclusions to the absolute discussions to the conclusions that have been made by the DA party on the Israeli-Palestinian matter, especially if the DA becomes, the leader in this election and probably ends the presidential seat. It's difficult for her to ascertain at the moment what would be the DA's, place or position in terms of how the war would probably end or probably be transgressed into the future. But in this regard anyway, I think Emma Powell in her interview also spoke about how the DA wants to oppose the ANC's approach. So the DA, in a way, according to Emma Powell, actually is in disagreement with Naledi Pando's call to the Hamas leader. I think there was a call at some point, and the DA is actually in the process now to question the ANC's use of state's resources to drive this case, especially with the situation South Africa is now, where there's really weak service delivery and a lot of issues going on economically with South Africa, that South Africa shouldn't be using state's resources to pursue the case against Israel at the ICJ. But the DA has this stance that it is for a two-state solution, and that both the Israelis and the Palestinians have a right to statehood. But their central problem is with the ANC's use of state funds in fighting for a legitimacy for a Palestinian cause. And that's the DA's position, and that's what the DA seems to be critiquing towards the ANC. And I would assume that this would be the DA stance. So I don't know, what do you guys think about her speech, especially her description of the EFF and the PA being kind of like supreme leaders, but at the same time the DA's relationship with this whole ICJ case and what it's probably going to stand for in the future. Share your thoughts. You guys have to fill us up on this one. Share your thoughts in the comments.